32 is the time right now. This morning, we now know the results of the elections here in Virginia. It was a clean sweep for the Democrats who won the governor's, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general's races. That blue wave continued into the House of Delegates, with Democrats now in control there as well. Our Simone D'Alba is in Richmond this morning, taking a closer look at the impacts of last night's results. Good morning, Simone.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Of course, the election results from last night's Virginia election already being felt all the way in Washington. Joining us now is Sam Shirazi. He is the host of Federal Fallout podcast. He has been tracking how the decisions made here in the Commonwealth could really help shape the federal landscape. Sam, it is so good to be with you. I'm a big fan of your podcast. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm a little tired, late night last night, but I appreciate you having me on.
Let's talk about the top of the ticket. I wanted to dive right in, with what ultimately defined the governor's race here. If you had to boil it down, would you say it's personality, policy, party, some combo of all of those things? What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think there was a lot going on. Certainly with the scale of the win, Abigail Spanberger was a strong candidate at the top of the ticket. But the reality is most of the election was defined by what was going on in D.C. It essentially became a referendum on Trump, and it usually becomes a referendum on the incumbent president. And obviously, the voters sent a clear signal that they were looking for a different direction.
Something I thought was really interesting, you were talking about the balance of power in your podcast, specifically with the House of Delegates. And I heard you say, look, it's not whether Democrats will necessarily remain in control of the House, but whether or not they will expand that power. Has this played out or started to play out, at least with the House of Delegates, as you envisioned?
Yeah, I certainly thought the Democrats would make some gains in the Virginia House of Delegates, but the scale of the victory was much bigger than I had expected. And right now it looks like the Democrats are going to pick up 13 seats in the Virginia House of Delegates, so they will have most likely 64 out of 100 seats. That's the largest majority they've had in a long time. And I think it's just another indication that this was not just at the governor's level, really at all levels in Virginia, there was a blue wave last night.
The other thing I really thought was fascinating, you talking about how elections are kind of won in the margins, and really how big those margins, how it would be kind of translating into how decisive maybe a Spanberger victory would be all the way down the ticket. Did you feel that the margins were kind of impressive? You touched on the governor, but what about the other two, lieutenant governor, attorney general, some of the margins we're seeing there?
Yeah, sure. So for Lieutenant Governor Ghazala Hashmi, also won by double digits, around 11 points. So that was obviously also a big win for her. And I think the big surprise of the night was the Attorney General race, Jay Jones winning first off, but also it wasn't particularly close. I think we were all expecting a late night, maybe having to wait for the final votes. But really, at the end of the day, it looks like Jay Jones will win by about 6%. And I think that's just another indication that it wasn't just a top of the ticket thing. It really was the voters in Virginia wanting to send a message and wanting to give the Democrats a big victory.
Let's talk about Jay Jones, because to that point, one of the pundits I was speaking with last night said, look, his victory, quite frankly, has nothing to do with him and everything to do with a referendum on Washington, a referendum on Donald Trump. In your research, do you find that potentially to be the case? What would you say to that?
Right. So obviously, the story with the text that came out had an impact in that race, and he didn't get as a big a win as the other candidates. But I had kind of heard from a lot of voters that obviously they didn't like what Jay Jones did in that moment, but they understood that this was maybe more than just one person. This was about the office of Attorney General. And now that Jay Jones will become the Attorney General in January, he will be able to sue the Trump administration, do a lot of things that Jason Miyares hadn't done while he was Attorney General. So while individual candidates matter, ultimately I think the voters understood that the Office of Attorney General was more than just kind of the names on the ballot.
As we look ahead, we've been hearing a lot about Virginia being a bellwether for the rest of the nation, especially in terms of the 2026 midterms. What's your sense of how this Democratic momentum might play out for the midterms?
Sure. So obviously Democrats feel good. They feel like they have momentum. They want to build on what happened in Virginia and also in New Jersey to hopefully, from their perspective, win back Congress in 2026. Now, I will say, obviously, that's a year off. There's a lot of things that could change. Just because a party does well on one night doesn't mean they're going to do well in another night. And I think both parties, they're going to try to learn lessons after this election, and certainly the Republicans, I think, are going to try to learn maybe what not to do next year during the midterms.
All right, Sam Shirazi, host of the Federal Fallout podcast. Thank you for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.